we got honors geometry come in this way, and they've got wave frequency tables learning today. Wah, 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 wah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of a two-way frequency table. It has two different types of categories. In this case, gender is down the rows, labeling the rows. We got subjects labeling the columns, and then the frequencies are what fill the inside of this thing. And that's what we're going to talk about today, our two-way frequency tables. So the problems are pretty darn easy. There's not a lot of math involved if you can understand what they're asking for. That's going to be the major thing to overcome. And so I'm going to try to give you some tips, some tricks, some words to really look for. Here's some definitions. First of all, a two-way frequency table is defined as two variable data that is displayed in a table such that the relationships among two categorical variables, so in this case, gender is one of the variables, and course preference is the other. Now, obviously, those aren't always going to be the categories, but that's what they're doing, is they're taking two categorical variables and dividing them up, one on rows, one on columns, and then building the frequencies within there. Now, the types of frequencies you're going to see are either going to be in the internal part of the table. So that's just blue area or gray or whatever you want to call that color in here. And those are called joint frequencies. And it's because they join two different categories. For example, 8 males in our studio, or 10 females in technology course. They're joining two categories. Those are called joint frequencies. Whenever you see the word frequency, it's just asking you how frequently something is occurring. It's not a probability or a ratio. It's just a value, a number. Okay, should be an integer. Marginal frequencies are in the margins. Now, if you ever become an accountant, you'll know the margins very well, because you'll have margins at the bottom of the columns. These are margins. Okay, and you'll have margins at the end of the rows. These are margins. And those are, always the ones that you're adding up and hoping that they reconcile or add up to each other when you're done. If not, then you made a mistake. But those are called the marginal frequencies, and they're the totals, the total number of males, the total number of females, the total number of band students, etc. Okay. And then finally, we do have the total frequency, which is the total number of respondents that built this table. The total number of males and female have to add up to that total. The total number of elective students have to add up to that number. If they don't, then this is not a true frequency table. There's some either mistakes or there's some like overlaps. Here is an example of some terminology you might see. Okay, conditional relative frequency. As soon as you see conditional, that means that we're going to be using one of the categories as a condition. Maybe it's a gender, maybe it's a type of class, but one of those is going to be a condition, okay? And when you see either relative or probability, that immediately means it's going to be a ratio comparing those two numbers, as just opposed to a frequency by itself. If it just says frequency, they just want a number. If it says that they want a probability or a relative frequency, we need to build ourselves a ratio and possibly generate a percentage from that ratio. These are the terms you really got to look at, okay? So here's an example of a conditional or relative frequency or a conditional probability. The females in a technology course compared to the total number of females. So the condition, okay, the condition is that we have a female, okay? And given that we have that female, knowing that there is a female there, what we need really is to know how many of them are in a technology course. And so what we get is we get 10 out of 54 total females, which then generates a percentage, in this case, about 19%. So these are the key words that you really have to look for. Let's go and look at some examples, and hopefully we'll start to see how these click. Okay, example one. What is the joint frequency? So joint means we're combining two things, so it'll be in here somewhere, okay? And frequency just means it's one of these numbers. It does not say it's a relative frequency. It does not say that it's a conditional probability or anything. It's just going to be one of these values. Which one? Well, for a female, okay, choosing an art studio. So how many, that's all a frequency is a total. How many females are in our studio? Oh, 22. That's all they want, okay? All they wanted on this problem was the number 22. And you just had to combine the two different categories to create that frequency. Number two, what is the marginal frequency? Okay, so that means it's coming from the margin. Now, once again, it doesn't say anything about conditional frequency, though, does it? So that means we shouldn't be looking for a probability of any kind. We're just looking for a number again, but it's going to come from a margin. So what is the marginal frequency that the survey respondent was taking an art studio class? Now, we could be coming from these margins, but because the different electives are along the columns, I think that the margins we're looking at are right in here. These are our margins, okay? So what is the marginal frequency that our student took? Art studio? Well, looks like 30 to me. That's how you read the table. Until you understand the words and what you're trying to get out of them, it can be confusing. But once you get it, these are really fairly simple problems. All right, what is the probability? So for the first time, we're actually looking for a ratio this time, a probability, okay? That a student chooses the technology elective given. This is a really important word. When you see given, that's going to tell you the total. That's going to tell you the bottom of your probability, given that they are a male. So we know that they're a male, right? What is the probability that they chose technology? Okay, so the males that chose technology were 20 out of a total of 46. And so if you set up that proportion, or not even a proportion, just a ratio, you get 20 46 or roughly 43%. Okay, that's how you do it. Here's example 4. Find the relative frequency. So notice it didn't just say frequency. If it just said frequency, okay, we'd just be looking for one of these numbers, but it says relative frequency, so we're going to have to compare two of these numbers, how they relate, relative frequency. So for a student selecting art studio, how many students took art studio? 30. How many of those 30 students were males? So looks like we're talking about a relative frequency of 8/30ths, or I don't know, it's called 27%. Okay? All right, example 5. Find the relative frequency. So once again, relative frequency means we're looking for a probability that a student selects band, okay, as an elective. So how many students selected band? Well, 18 males, 22 females, 40 total students. Out of what? Well, the total number of students, I guess, right? It should be 100. So the relative frequency that a student took band is 40 out of 100. I think we could probably figure out that percentage without a calculator. Wouldn't that just be 40%? Okay. So that is your relative frequency that the student took band in the survey. You've got, I think, 2 pages worth of these problems at the end of the data packet, so that's going to be what you should be working on today. If you work on it in the morning or in the early afternoon or even the mid-afternoon, you can tune in at our 2 o'clock help session, and we tried to meet yesterday, didn't work, so you may give it one more shot, but Jamboard is okay if we need to. If you don't get a chance to get it done by that session, but you do get a chance to email me or post a couple questions you want me to go over for sure on this assignment by, say, about 5 or so tomorrow evening, I would be happy to try to include those problems in the video which goes over this assignment, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go over all of the questions, but we'll see. Have a good morning and enjoy your remote learning experience.